I see some familiar faces on this webinar, and it is absolutely wonderful to be here. I'm thankful for you all. I hope everyone in your family and your community is well and safe, and you all remain that way. I'm always grateful to be with you all. I'm also humble. It's kind of crazy because I get kind of nervous, so pardon me for stuttering. Anyway, but anyway, we're here tonight. We're going to have some wonderful speakers, people that know what they're talking about, people that have experienced the end result of plastic. And so hopefully we're going to find ways to break through the noise and confusion that's created by design and default, right? And all that's causing all this unprecedented suffering across Turtle Island. I hope as we gather here that our hearts and minds are open to each other, that our energy and desire to work together to fix what is broken, to consider in all that we do is that we do for the good of all. We set aside our human frailties that stand in the way of achieving what is right and good. I've been asked to do a land acknowledgement. I just want to remind everyone that these were the lands of our indigenous ancestors who were found to be prosperous and peaceful for the most part. And we're still here. They tried to get rid of us, but we're still here. We're gonna stay. And I appreciate everyone that I work with who recognizes that not just me, but that the indigenous folks that I work with, my elders, our ancestors, the knowledge that we try to carry forward is valuable to people. So again, this evening, we're going to talk about the unbelievable destruction that's taking place all around us. And it's all for a select few to continue to profit and threaten our health and the health of the planet. Just today, a report hit the wires that scientists have found microplastics in human organs, giving us, well, the title is Giving Activists More Ammo to Demand Change in Plastic Pollution. You think? Yeah, because we're finding much more evidence of damage and the infiltration that these plastics are making into our environment. I'm not sure what we can do to fix it, but we definitely don't need any more. And I will put the link to that study. It was from The Nation. I'll put it in the chat when I get done here. But our indigenous ancestors and our elders, our faith keepers, our storytellers, along with archaeology, the evidence that they find, archaeologists, I can't say that, sorry. Anyway, that you know, there's evidence that humanity has repeated, you know, the rise and fall of mankind. From humble and simple ways of survival to building empires. But each time at some juncture, we didn't learn from our past mistakes. We didn't learn that greed and ego and the mistaken belief that we can somehow skip over the consequences, that we're superior and we can take what we want when we want it and it comes without consequences. Some of us, but not enough of us, recognize the human race has not learned these truths from history. The ancient lessons have been dismissed, and today we watch as they are dismissed with prejudice. As the so-called modern society, we've abandoned the knowledge we were supposed to have accumulated and remembered. Too many have allowed their desires for instant self-gratification to forget their responsibilities to their family, their communities, clans, nations, and to our descendants. So we've forgotten our responsibility to contribute to the whole, to make decisions based and act on the good of all. And these aren't just aspirations, they're not someone's imagination. These ways are solidly grounded in truths in what we call natural law. And this is true for all of humanity, not just me or not just my indigenous relatives, but you here with us. We all have ancestors that once understood and acted with the full knowledge of this reality. Their knowledge is still within us and is our responsibility to honor what was given, sacrificed for us to be here today. Can we say we're doing the same for our descendants? Well, we have a lot to discuss, to plan, to figure out how we bring our peoples back into balance, how we stop the violence and abuses, heal as much of Mother that has been damaged, destroyed, and stop what some will continue to destroy. And we too, on this video conference, we must take some responsibility for the waste, rampant extraction, exponentially growing, taking every element from clearing, mowing down trees and forests, digging deep within the earth, and taking every drop of lifeblood to create more junk, more stuff, because we've somehow forgotten where we came from, what we depend on. And for those select few I keep mentioning, they know what we're doing. They know we know what they're doing. And we're not going to stand by. We are fighting back, and we will win. Our resolve is built on the spirit of our ancestors. They do continue to try to destroy us, but we will not stop, and we will continue to fight. So I want to introduce somebody, Diane. She's going to tell you about our summit next month. I didn't know if I was supposed to do this or not, but anyway, the summit is going to be a whole bunch of information, from a little bit more of what the impacts are, what's happening, but more or less sharing ways to reduce the demands on the environment so that we can live well and prosper. So I'll stop now. I don't want to take up any more time planned for our amazing speakers this evening. I'm ready to engage, listen, and learn, and I'm sure you are too. So to close, I'm very grateful. I pray for you, your families, your friends, your community, and yeah, hopefully we're going to make it together. So thank you very much. Thank you. And now I introduce Diane. She will tell you a little bit about our summit. Take it away, Diane.
Thank you very much, BJ. Beautifully said, as always. I'm not going to take much time. My goal here is, I'm Diane Peterson. I'm part of the A to Z team that put this together. Thank you for joining us this summer. I hope you continue to stay with us as we move into our summit happening September 17th through September 20th. Thursday, September 17th through Sunday, September 20th. Please write that down in your book. Important information. So my job here is to whet your appetite, so you make sure to write that down in your calendar. Friday, yes, I know I said we started Thursday, but I am going to leave the best for last. Friday, we'll be doing something really interesting and fun. We'll be having entertainment with some local artists that will be playing some music, some original music that actually has to deal with plastics, so that's kind of fun. And at the same time, we will be working under David Solnit, who is an activist and an artist. He's got quite the title. He's a global climate justice, anti-warrior, direct action organizer. Sorry if I had to read that one. It's a long one. So he's and he's the author of The Puppeteer and The Trainer. He's also a puppeteer as well as an artist. And this should be very exciting to work together to do an art build while we're listening to music. So live music. So that should be live virtual music. So that's Friday, September 18th. Saturday is our main day. We're going to have a panel. I'm not going to tell you who's going to be on it because you need some surprise. You need some motivation to get there. We'll be talking about focusing on strategies, solutions, and actions. And then we're going to have facilitated breakout sessions. If you are interested in being one of those breakout session leaders, there will be, look over here in the chat, I think it's that way, how you can sign up to do that. Sunday, we will have a simultaneous solidarity action. And we will be using the art that we made in the art build. And we're hoping that this is going to go global. So I hope you can join us. And like I said, we are actually starting on Thursday. And let me tell you what's happening on Thursday. We are going to get together and chat with somebody I met in a bar. Doesn't that make you want to come? Well, you know, I did actually meet Steve Wilson in a bar, and you can meet some pretty darn interesting people in some pretty mundane ways. But this person I met in the bar invited me to a screening of his film, which happens to be called, ready? The Story of Plastics. If you have anything to do with plastics, you're going to know this is the biggie right now. This is the film that everyone wants to see. So on Thursday, the 17th of September, we will not only be viewing this together, but we will have Steve Wilson, the director of that film, giving us a little intro, giving us a little chat, and then we have a chance to chat with him personally. I am so psyched. I hope you are too, and I look forward to seeing you Thursday the 17th, Friday the 18th for the art build, Saturday with the panel on the 19th, and on Sunday the 20th for our simultaneous action. This is going to be really good. I hope you're all there. Thanks. Thanks for your time. And now off to Chrissy, who's going to show us how to get to Leann and Jed. I really look forward to evening. I hope you do too. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Hey, friends. I know there are a lot of introductions and commercials for a lot of amazing work happening, but I'll be your MC tonight, and I'm really excited to meet you all. My name's Chrissy Stonebreaker Martinez. I'm the co-executive director and coordinator of the Interreligious Task Force on Central America and Colombia, or IRTF Cleveland. Our organization was founded as an anti-militarism organization when two women from Cleveland, Jean Donovan and Dorothy Kazel, were murdered alongside two women from New York, Maura Clark and Ida Ford, in 1980 in El Salvador. And because of our work accompanying migrants throughout the migrant trail across the Western Hemisphere and the Americas, we have to focus on environmental justice, racial justice, economic justice as well, because these are the issues that affect not just the region, but the human rights context for the entire world. And as our organization was really founded in the beginning as an organization that was focusing on the rights of human rights defenders in our international legal support, we started to see in the past 20 years, as climate change has accelerated drastically, that the rates of assassination of environmental human rights defenders also drastically increased. And so we've been tracking that for about 40 years now. And that stark contrast around the beginning of the 2000s of people specifically working for the defense and support of all peoples and all lands and their native and the native persons that found community and build community in these lands. We just realized, you know, that that this is crucial, and it's more urgent than ever, right? So I myself am a Colombian and Appalachian, displaced from my indigenous Embera homelands in what's now known as Colombia, and I'm really honored to be with you all tonight, and to introduce our speakers and to moderate our question and answer session afterwards. So tonight, we're first going to hear from Leann. Leann is with Earthworks, Pennsylvania and Ohio as a field advocate and a certified optical gas imaging thermographer. Sorry. I'm used to long titles too, Leann, but yours is just a little bit of a tongue twister. I'm so grateful for you though, and all of your work. Leann, she partners with communities to expose the oil and gas industry's air pollution in the Appalachian region, and to advocate for protections for health and the climate. And I'm so grateful for all that you do there as well, because of my Appalachian family members in Spencer, West Virginia. Leann, take it away. I'll give you a short time check in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna share my screen now. Okay, yep, it looks like I can do that. Bear with me here, and we will see the presentation in just a moment. All right. Can everyone see slides, starting with the title slide? Seeing nods. Looks good? Okay,
That's
great. Again, thank you for the introduction, Chrissy. Thank you to everyone who's made these events possible. It truly is an honor to be able to speak in this series. The sessions that I've seen so far have been fantastic, and I know I'm helping close out this awesome series after many amazing speakers. And I'm so honored to be talking alongside Jed and sharing the virtual stage. I know that in this series, we've learned about everything from the economics of plastics to the health impacts. And today, I think we're going to be focusing on plastics' role in climate change. What I get to share with you today is the fact that that pollution, especially the air pollution from oil and gas, or I'm sorry, from plastics, actually starts well before we see a nurdle or get to an ethane cracker. It really begins at the wellhead. If you're not aware already, the oil and gas industry provides the majority of the feedstock that's used to make most plastics today. And so we're going to be taking a look at the pollution from that industry across the US. And I would just say that as you see these examples, that you keep in mind that the pollution from this industry really starts here. It starts in shale gas communities like mine and many others across the US. And I promise that even though we're going to see some scary footage of this air pollution, we're going to be closing with ideas for action, because I know this is an action-oriented group. So I'm speaking to you today from Washington County, Pennsylvania, land, I believe, of the Osage and Shawnee peoples, and also the sitting atop the Marcellus and Utica shales. Pennsylvania is second only to Texas for its fracked gas production. My county in Pennsylvania has the most fracked gas production in the state. You can see it here in red. It's just maybe 25 miles south of the city of Pittsburgh. Our county has, in addition to well over 1,000 fracked wells, we have numerous compressor stations, pipelines, and other facilities, including several large gas processing plants, one of which you can see in the bottom left corner. This was the site of a 2018 fatal explosion and fire. This is about 3 miles from my home. This is just one of the many incidences that my community has dealt with in the about 3.5 years that I've lived here. I'm born and raised in Pennsylvania, but newer to the western side of the state. In just that 3.5 short years, there have been numerous well blowouts. There have been countless spills to waterways and other violations. And it has really produced, I think, an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear in our communities. And that is epitomized, I think, by the recent news that some of you may have heard across the US of rare childhood cancers that seem to be appearing in high numbers in actually my school district and in the surrounding 3 counties with significant oil and gas development. And you can see here featured some of the young people who have been stricken with this cancer and some of whom have passed away. So residents are pushing for a better understanding of whether the heavy oil and gas development is correlated in any way with the incidences of these rare cancers. So of course, the threat from oil and gas development is not limited here to where I live. This really is a nationwide issue. This tool, which is created by Frac Tracker, Clean Air Task Force, and Earthworks, is a special map because instead of just showing us where oil and gas facilities are located, and they're well over 1.25 million in the US, this shows us where human populations are living within a half mile or less of one or more of those facilities, and especially, in an especially risky close radius. And I should say that I think the data from this map is maybe about 3 years old, so the situation is probably a little more dire today than what we can even see here. And And this really has produced a health crisis. I can speak to this personally from my work with communities. I hear stories constantly from folks that are experiencing ailments that appear to correlate with the health literature. There are well over hundreds of studies at this point. I am not sure of the current number at this point. I know there had been 700 back in 2015. A recent review of studies on fracking and health showed 90% of those indicate increased risks or health impacts from oil and gas development. And this is just one of the latest bits of research that I pulled in here. The news about about the impacts to children, babies who are born and near oil and gas development. PSR, Physicians for Social Responsibility, I think puts it really well by stating that they don't have evidence that fracking can be practiced in a manner that does not harm human health. But of course, we're here today to talk about the climate aspect of plastics. So I want to focus our attention there. And the tie-in between oil and gas development, climate, and plastics comes very much in part from methane. So methane is the primary constituent of what is often called natural gas. And it's also a common byproduct of oil extraction. And methane is 86 times more powerful than carbon dioxide for warming the atmosphere when you look at it over a short 20-year time period. So that's an important fact. We're going to come back to that in just a slide or two here. The oil and gas industry is the largest industrial source of methane emissions, and that methane is responsible for 25% of today's global warming. We know, just based on the estimates from the industry that are reported to state and federal governments, that they are a significant contributor to climate change, but studies routinely show that those methane emissions have been drastically underestimated. And in a little bit, I'll talk about research that indicated just that in Pennsylvania, where I'm speaking to you from. And in case you've heard any promises about natural gas being an alternative to coal and being a bridge fuel that can help lead us towards a renewable energy future, that has been well disproven at this point. And that comes in part from the fact that even very small leaks of methane really negate any supposed climate benefit that it might have over coal. So this brings us to plastics. As I said, the oil and gas wells are the source for the majority of the feedstock, 99% of what goes into making plastics, of the chemicals used to make plastics. And much of that is produced specifically for single use, meaning things that touch our hands once, like a chip bag, and then they're in the trash right after that. And I mentioned chips because I eat a lot of chips. And 91% of all plastic, even that which is designed to be recycled, ends up being thrown away or does not make it into the recycling stream. Plastics are one of the most greenhouse gas intensive manufacturing industries out there. And if you haven't heard, the Appalachian region where I live and where I work has been targeted for a major plastics and petrochemical boom. And the first of these world scale ethane crackers is under construction right now north of Pittsburgh. And several others have been proposed for the area. Okay, so that gets us, I think, past some of the doom and gloom and into things that give me hope and that I hope can give you hope as well. So if you recall that I mentioned that methane is this super powerful greenhouse gas, but it has a lot of its impact is in the first 10 and 20 years that it's in the atmosphere. So that means that actually gives us hope for the climate crisis, because if we can reduce these methane emissions and move away from fossil fuels very quickly, this would have an immediate and lasting impact on our climate stability. And research has continued to show this. So now I get to talk about the work that I do and that Earthworks does to try to hasten this transition away from fossil fuels as a dirty energy source. And a lot of this centers around a really fascinating tool called optical gas imaging. I'm sure some of you have seen and heard of this before. You may have heard it called a FLIR camera, which is the brand name, or I'll just call it often an OGI camera. You can see here my friend and personal hero, Sharon Wilson with Earthworks in Texas, filming, I believe, an unlit flare at a facility using one of our OGI cameras. And I'm going to show you lots more examples as we go. Some of the basics to know is that this camera is a state-of-the-art tool, industry standard. It's used by the US EPA, by state regulators, and by gas companies as well to look for leaks and other pollution. And it really, what it does is it allows us to see hydrocarbons that come from oil and gas development that you just can't see with the naked eye. So here's another look at the camera and how it works. So what you're seeing on the left there is a conventional well in northwestern Pennsylvania. And if you look at it with the naked eye, it doesn't look like much is happening, right? When you turn on the OGI camera, you can see, however, that there is actually a significant leak coming from one of the valves at this facility. Earthworks has, I believe, 4 trained thermographers on staff. I recently became one of them back in May of last year. And I think we have 3 cameras that we ship back and forth across the US to do this work. So here's a look at some of the gases that the camera can detect. It can detect other gases, but these are those that the camera has been designed and calibrated to detect at a specific leak rate. I want to just highlight a few for you. One is methane, which you've heard me talk about a bit, and another is compounds that are often referred to in collection as the BTEX compounds. These are known and suspected carcinogens. We'll be coming back to these with one of the examples that I share in just a moment. And so basically what we do at Earthworks with this camera, we're often responding to requests from community members who want to know what they're being exposed to or who want help getting improvements to their air quality from oil and gas facilities near them. So we visit them with the optical gas imaging camera, document leaks and other air pollution, and we frequently file complaints with regulatory agencies as well. And what we're finding with our work is that the air pollution is everywhere. It is across the entire supply chain. We're seeing air pollution from trucks and diesel engines that are there to prepare a site well before the well pad is even drilled. We're seeing it from wells once they've been put in the ground and put into production, from pipelines and valves, compressor stations and metering stations, and processing plants like the one that I showed you at the beginning of our talk. Here's an idea of just the many places where Earthworks has done this work across the US and actually beyond. We've been in 22 different states and countries. We've done almost 2,000 site visits and filed almost 400 complaints. And so if you go to this link, cep.earthworks.org, that's a great way to learn more about what we're doing, but also you can use this interactive map to look and see optical gas imaging videos that we've taken near you. So these will expand and you can see the videos, complaints that we filed, and you can also see the some interviews with impacted residents. Sorry, just trying to move my windows around here. Okay. All right, so now I want to show you what we're seeing when we're actually out at these sites. I'm going to focus primarily on Pennsylvania and Ohio, which is where I do the majority of my work, and include some more examples from Texas. So remember, this is getting to see plastics pollution pretty much at the beginning of the supply chain. This example is from not that far from where I live, a couple miles away. This is my coworker, Pete Dronkers, who's also one of our certified thermographers. And if you take a look at those kind of bright red tanks at the back of the image, now you'll get to see what it looks like, or what it looked like when we were there through the optical gas imaging camera. You can see there's actually a large release of pollution. It started just moments after we got there and turned on the camera, and continued, unabated for about half an hour while we were there. Here's another example from just a few miles from the first one, actually. This was a well pad that was under development and doesn't look like much, as you can see from the hillside where we were standing. But then when we turn on the optical gas imaging camera, it reveals that there are actually what appear to be a series of engines, perhaps diesel or gas-fired engines, that are emitting a large plume of pollution. This is a compressor station. If you're not familiar with these, they are a large facility that is used to move gas along pipelines. This one you'll see is, I think, pretty typical from what we tend to see out in my region in compressor stations. And you're seeing here the plumes of emissions coming from engines located in or behind the compressor station. And I always want to tell people that what you're seeing here is not a blowdown or a special event. This is pretty standard. In fact, I've been to, I or my coworkers have been to this same facility probably about a dozen times over several years, and the pollution looks very similar on every occasion. There are many other compressor stations in this area, and we're seeing similar plumes from these as well. Here's an example of a condensate tanks at a conventional well site. So conventional wells are often shallower, smaller, lower producing. In some cases, they're older than the fracking wells that have occurred with the more recent boom in the past decade or decade and a half. Here, I want you to look at the pipes that are coming out of the top of those two tanks. And you can see that they're venting quite a significant plume of pollution from both of these. And in fact, this site, my colleague and I were out here with two local researchers who had with them a methane detector. They happened to have the window rolled down as we were driving down the road, and their detector went off to its maximum level just by driving by. We couldn't even see the facility yet. It was back in the woods. We had to go back a dirt road to get to it. And of course, those levels were very high. And that's just one of many of these types of sites that we've documented in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Here are emissions from another type of tank. If you recall me mentioning the BTEX suite of compounds earlier, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene, which are known or suspected carcinogens. This tank was actually, the state regulators in Pennsylvania required the operator to install this tank after we filed several complaints based on other leaks at this fracked well site. Unfortunately, this tank, which was supposed to either mitigate or limit the BTEX emissions, wasn't working properly. And so on this and several other occasions, we documented a hatch that was actually left open on the tank and allowed this pollution to leak out into the yard and the home of residents who live about 500 feet from the fence line of this facility. So I want to take us to Ohio. This aerial view here provided by Frac Tracker Alliance, thanks to them. Take a look at those blue tanks that you see in the image. We're going to look at a valve on the top of those tanks. This is often called an Anardo valve, and we can see here that it's just venting, releasing pollution in what appears to be a really significant plume. This was happening from the moment I turned on my camera until I left about 20 minutes later. So, this is potentially a pretty consistent source of emissions. And this is another example from Ohio, and one that really, really sticks with me, and some of you may have heard of it as well. This was the 2018 XTO well blowout in Powhatan Point, Ohio. My team and I were there actually on request from a resident featured here who wanted us to take a look at compressor stations that were surrounding his home. His children had been experiencing unexplained nosebleeds. There were other respiratory symptoms and cardiac symptoms appearing in the adult members of the family. And so they asked us to come out with our cameras. It just happened to be at the same time that this massive well blowout was taking place. It lasted for, I believe, 30 days. No, I'm sorry, it was 20 days, so about 3 weeks that it took for them to cap this well. And it was pretty dramatic. I mean, even before we turn on the OGI cameras, you can see there's a plume a geyser of liquids, gases, smoke coming out of this well about 100 feet in the air. But when we turned on the camera, we could see that that plume actually went far higher and traveled well along the hillside for miles, far outside of the zone that was evacuated due to this incident. You know, the climate impact here is really notable, but I want to talk for a minute, if I can, about the residents who made it possible for us to get this footage and to call on the regulators to do an investigation. You know, they described in such terrifying terms what it was like to live through this event, to try to get their children safely out of the elementary school, and how their kids for weeks after the explosion kept bags of toys near their bedroom doors in case they would have to evacuate. So, you know, I don't want our conversation about the climate impacts, which is so important, to lose that aspect of the very human immediate impacts that are happening to people that live near this development. But ultimately, a year after this incident, we worked with satellite researchers who then produced a paper that showed that this single event was one of the largest methane releases known in US history. And in fact, it released more greenhouse gases than most European countries do in 1 year. And lastly, I'm just going to show two more examples from Texas, because the footage there that my colleague Sharon Wilson has obtained is incredible. And I've been there myself to see some of it. This is emissions from tanks and also from an unlit flare in Pecos, Texas. And in the beautiful town of Balmorhea, Texas, here we see emissions from a tank battery. So again, this problem is not exclusive to Appalachia, unfortunately. So I think this OGI evidence serves many purposes. One of them is to show the failings of our regulations and our regulators to protect people from this industry. And here is just some visuals, of one of the gaps in policy, which I'll highlight because I've been very involved in it, is here in Pennsylvania. These older conventional wells that I mentioned, which are often a very significant source of pollution in the aggregate, are potentially going to be left out of new regulations that would help limit pollution from the industry. The problem is these smaller wells still pollute a lot. They actually add up to, I believe it's the greenhouse gas pollution of 1.5 million cars being on the road from our roughly 100,000 conventional wells. So we really need stronger regulations to deal with these pollution problems. And at the same time, we need much stronger enforcement of the regulations. So Earthworks recently released this report specific to Pennsylvania about our investigations over the past 3 years and the gaps that we've seen in enforcement and regulatory response. We'll soon be issuing reports in Ohio and several other states. So please continue to check back with us so we can send you those reports. And bringing us kind of to the full circle here and more of a message of hope, I think we all agree that we really need to transition away from this polluting industry, but we don't want to leave workers behind. So I think it's essential that we do recognize that regulations have been proven to be net job creators. We can get people out there looking for and repairing these leaks. But we can also put oil and gas workers back to work in plugging old and abandoned wells, which is a huge challenge many states are dealing with now. Ohio has taken amazing bipartisan action to dedicate $25 million to their plugging effort this year. And Canada has dedicated $1.7 billion to plugging old and abandoned wells. So here's where I get to ask something of all of you in your ample spare time that I'm sure you all have. I know you're all very involved, but I'd like to ask that when you're thinking about or talking about or tweeting about plastics and pollution, that you keep in mind that the pollution does start here in communities like mine, and think of ways that you can share that proof. This link, which I'll add to the chat here in a moment, is a way that you can access the archives of footage that we have from various states And I'm sure you can all think of creative ways to use this footage, whether it's sharing it in a Senate testimony, as a resident did here in one of these photos, or putting it on your social media, as one of our representative friends in Pennsylvania has done, or just following Earthworks on our social media channels so you can retweet the new footage and evidence as we pull it together. So thank you so much for listening so intently, and I hope this was helpful. And thank you for any effort, any work that you can do to help share this evidence with others. And I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so much, Leann. Because we are running a little late, we're only going to take a couple of questions. Are there any in the chat?
The question.
Anyone want a hand raise?
I'm seeing a hand from Patricia DeMarco. I could follow along in the chat, so I don't know if there's any in there, but happy to answer any questions I can.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you if you're working on the fact that Trump's administration has rescinded the limits on methane releases from oil and gas wells. It was an Obama-era climate action that was just rescinded last week. Is there any hope of getting that reimposed, except also including the capped conventional wells into the whole process?
That is a great question. I have never gambled before. I think maybe I bought a lottery ticket when I was 18. So I guess I won't make any forecasts as to the likelihood of it. But what I can say is that yes, I and Earthworks have been pretty vocal on this issue. This has been a process over more than a year now, I think, as we've been, sending impacted residents to testify in this regard. We've issued public statements. I've been trying to weave this into conversations with media, and really excited that some of them have really done a great job of covering this. As you might know, Andrew Wheeler of the EPA came to Pittsburgh, of all places, to sign this rollback. I definitely think that that's a pretty offensive gesture for those of us living here with the horrible air quality and impacts that come from oil and gas development. I'm certainly hopeful that we could see those rules reinstated, but it is really frustrating given the huge public support for those rules and the, even the industry support in many cases for those rules. So yeah, thanks for asking about that. I really hope that we can see change there.
I also put in the chat the Reimagine Appalachia Blueprint link. I know many of you who are on here are working on that, but it's really a counterpoint to the petrochemical build out that works for us in this region of Appalachia, because I think we have better choices and we need to be more vocal about pursuing things that give good jobs and don't kill us at the same time. The imagery that you just showed, I mean, makes my hair curl. I would really love to be able to use some of that if you have made public access to it with attribution. It's very powerful imaging. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't think I made this clear that we do make, the vast majority of the videos available to the public. I think we just don't bother with the ones that are, where I'm just accidentally filming a cow or something. So here is the link to the, see if that will come up. Can I do this to everybody? That should lead you to the state-by-state playlists. And then also you can visit this link for that map, which I find to be helpful because it lets you explore the map and look for sites that are near you. So those are great ways to find out more. And my contact information, which I think is no longer up on the screen, but I will paste it in here. even if it's not from my region, if I can find it for you or put you in touch with one of our other 3 thermographers who will, I'd be happy to help. There's my email address.
We've got a question in the chat from Marsha Lehman. I once heard an oil and gas person say that the plumes coming from the FLIR cameras were really just steam and water vapor and not petrol toxins. What are good talking points to refute that?
I'm always glad to answer this question because I know that misinformation is very, very common. I've actually had oil and gas operators try to tell me that, and then when I share that I'm certified and fully trained to use this technology, it often changes the conversation. Some of the key talking points for that, one of them is just really simple, which is this is a $100,000 camera, and oil and gas operators are using the exact same one. So are they really going to pay $100,000 for something that just tells them that their equipment is hot? That's not what the camera is designed for. It has a host of different technologies in it that actually make it very different from a regular infrared heat sensing camera. Yes, it can show heat, but you may have noticed in some of the videos that it also captures the relative ambient temperature of the surrounding air and the relative temperature of the gases that we are seeing being released. So we can actually show in each of these videos that what we're seeing is not just purely heat or steam. And then the other big thing is that we are always trying to pair these videos with what we call the naked eye or unaided eye image, because that makes it very clear that you can see smoke, you can see steam. We aren't able to see that with the naked eye. Or I'm sorry, we'd be able to see that with the naked eye. When we turn on the camera, we're seeing the plumes that weren't there before. And so those are all indications that this is not just purely heat and steam. And again, the fact that we're fully trained and certified and use these cameras very much in the same way as regulators and agencies and operators, I think is a good indication that that we're not just out there looking for hot air.
Okay, Leann, thank you so much. I think we're going to have a wonderful time learning more from you as we get deeper into discussion. I'm sure we'll get deeper in on Thursday as well. I just want to say thank you so much for all your expertise and all of your offerings to help us all understand these issues better and just come closer together on our strategy and our understanding of where we need to go.
Thanks.
Sorry. So we have one other speaker for you all tonight, and that is Jed Alegado. He is the Senior Communications Officer for Asia Pacific of hashtag Break Free from Plastic. I love that hashtag. So since joining the movement in 2017, he's been instrumental in leading Asia Pacific's communications work and organizing capacity building workshops on communications and campaigning for members in the region. So I am so grateful to you, Jed, for being here with us all the way from the Philippines, and we are so excited to learn more from you. So take it away.
Okay. Yeah. So good morning from Manila, Philippines, and yeah. So still August 18, right, in your region. Yeah. If I may be given the co-host, so I can share my screen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I hope it's working. Yeah. So yeah, while waiting for the screen sharing. So good morning again. Thank you for the nice introduction, and to organizers for inviting me here. Yeah, so Leann really, showed us the really link of plastics, no, to climate. So what I'm going to show is in terms of the Asian perspective on how we're also dealing with the complex relationship between plastics and climate. Yeah. Okay, so first, a brief introduction. Second, Stopping Plastics Where It Starts tour that I've participated 2 years ago. I will briefly share my experience, and then of course the link of plastics and climate from an Asian perspective, and the need to really build solidarity and bridge the fight between and among our groups. Yeah. So stopping plastic where it begins, or where it starts. So back in May 2018. That's 2 years ago. Well, a lot of things have happened along the way. So I, together with two other women activists from Asia, one from India and one from the Philippines, represented the Breakthrough from Plastic movement. So the other one she's Lakshmi Narayan. She's from India. She's a trade union waste picker activist. And then the other one is Myrna Dominguez. She's a food sovereignty activist from the Philippines, representing fisher folk communities who are actually impacted by plastic pollution, and then representing the disposal chain of plastic pollution. So we visited groups. We talked to different groups fighting petrochem build out in Texas, Louisiana, Pittsburgh, West Virginia, and ended the tour at the Earthworks office in Washington, D.C. So yeah, so these are Lakshmi and Myrna from India and the Philippines respectively. This was in Pittsburgh 2 years ago, where we had one of those public events. So we all know how really plastics, single-use plastics specifically, are connected to the issue of climate change, the issue of the petrochem build out and the oil and gas industry, especially in the different states that are also impacted by these build outs. And we know that 99% of plastics are derived from fossil fuel feedstocks, and that according to the Center of International Environmental Law, or Shell, in the report, Fueling Plastics, How Frack Gas, Cheap Oil, and Unburnable Coal are driving the plastics booms. The US fracking boom has made natural gas really, really cheap. And it is driving a massive expansion in new infrastructure for plastics and petrochemicals. And we see this every time we go to Costco, to other large supermarket chains, the deluge of single-use plastics in different sizes and different forms. And as the industry projection, by 2025, production capacity is projected to grow by 1/3 for both ethylene and propylene, lacking in a massive expansion of cheap plastic production for decades. Probably I'm not sure whether the COVID-19 situation, the pandemic, has slowed down this projection. But definitely, the greenhouse gases are emitted at each stage of the plastic life cycle. Yeah. Plastic pollution is a significant and growing threat to the Earth's climate. There's really a link, the big connection between our battles here in the developing countries to your battles there also in the big and developed country like the US. And stopping expansion of petrochemical and plastic production, and really making sure that fossil fuels in the ground is a critical element in addressing the climate crisis. The plastic life cycle, from fossil fuel extraction and transport to production and manufacturing to the disposal of plastic waste, whether it's landfill, is incinerated or recycled, there's really greenhouse gas emissions in every step of the way, the ongoing environmental impact. And probably in your previous A to Z plastics webinar, you have seen the health impacts as well of plastics, with microplastics, with the food packaging impacts as well. And its impact to human health and to other health of other species. Plastics is primarily landfilled, recycled, or incinerated, each of which produces varying amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. So, for example, if you incinerate it or you burn it, you have these GHG emissions, with energy recovery. Yeah. So at current levels, greenhouse gas emissions from the plastic life cycle threaten the ability of the global community to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees. Yeah. So it's really killing our oceans. And of course, we know, the threat of microplastics. Diane Wilson has been really waging a battle, and together with other groups as well, on microplastics and the impact to our environment. Yeah. So what are the high priority actions that we can take now in terms of plastic production? So definitely we need to end the production and use of single-use plastic, disposable plastic. That's why here, break free from plastic. Stop development of new oil, gas, and petrochemical infrastructure. That's all of you are doing in your respective communities. We need to transition to zero waste communities. And a lot of groups in the US and other regions as well, in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America, and South America, who are members of Break Free from Plastic, they are really, really helping communities to transition to zero waste. Implement extended producer responsibility as a critical component of circular economy. And these EPR or extended producer responsibility is something that we really need to here in Asia, in Southeast Asia. Well, at least some of countries here already have legislations, but we really need other countries to step up as well. And we need to really target ambitiously to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So, stopping the expansion of petrochem and plastic production and keeping fossil fuels in the ground, it really provides the surest and most effective path to reducing the rising climate impacts of plastics. And we have seen groups what you have been doing in your communities, in your respective states, to really stop the petrochemical build out, and really making sure it really helps our fight in making sure that plastic production is being stopped. But it doesn't end there. There's another way. There are also other ways on how countries countries in the global north, the companies headquartered in the US, in Europe, have been inundating us with waste as well. So where in the world is your plastic recycling going? So it goes to countries like Malaysia. So from Berkeley, California, we go to Malaysia. And according to the Ecology Center of in Berkeley, recyclers should have an oath first to do no harm. We should have a policy that we're here to prevent pollution, not be the source of pollution. With China's closing of doors of waste imports in 2018, I guess, January 2018, other countries are at the other Southeast Asian countries are at the receiving end of the waste dumping, you know, of waste importing. So Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, we have been experiencing a lot of waste dumping in our ports. So this picture, I think, is taken in Malaysia, where there are actually ports that have received waste imports. You know, these are single-use plastics, which actually there's no way of recycling these items, but were imported to these countries in a guise of recycling. Yeah. So you have this is Prigi Arisandi, one of our activists in Indonesia, in Surabaya, who have been really waging a battle against single-use plastics consumption and also waste dumping in his backyard. Yeah, in Surabaya, Indonesia. So especially last year, we have received a lot of reports in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, that, you know, we've received a lot of these single-use plastic waste, which can neither be recycled nor composted, which are in our ports. And actually, these wastes are coming from Canada, from the US, from Australia, from Hong Kong, from Japan, from South Korea. Yeah. So just to give you an overview of this issue of waste dumping, illegal waste dumping in our region. Yeah. And we also, that's why we're also active in global policy spaces. In the Basel Convention, we advocated for a prior informed consent and the right to refuse in terms of the waste imports being sent to us by the more developed countries. So what's the future of recycling? I saw someone in the chat box who actually mentioned, is there a way, what can we do about chemical recycling? So what's the future of recycling? Definitely recycling is not enough because only 9% of plastic ever made has been recycled. This is not to put recycling on a bad spot. You know, I mean recycling is good, but it's not that efficient. That's why these waste dumping has been happening from one rich nation to a poor nation. Yeah, and of course, with plastic production being projected to quadruple by 2050, we can unless we really stop plastic production, companies start to shift to more sustainable packaging and not, you know, green washing or false solutions, then this will be the business as usual approach. You know? We can definitely experience a lot of waste dumping in our countries as well, because of the luge of single-use plastics in the markets. So which future do we want? Is the business as usual approach, or the less plastic but more recycling? Yeah, and that's why we need to turn crisis into opportunity. And I guess in the US now you have this Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which we also hope can can somehow address the plastic pollution problem from the start to the end of the chain, from the production up to the waste disposal. Yeah. So definitely there's a way forward out of the plastic production and the deluge of waste dumping, single-use plastic waste dumping in our communities. We need to reduce virgin plastic production, meaning companies should really shouldn't renege on their commitment to that by, for example, 2025 they would reduce virgin plastic production, etc. They should really follow follow those commitments. We should definitely combat pollution from existing plastic production that have been continuously being done, and we should have a higher social and environmental standards for any continued recycling. Yeah. And the last part of my my presentation for today. So this is a sample of a picture, an image of a slum community in urban poor community in the Philippines. You can see here houses, slum communities, and really children literally breathing with plastic waste. And for the past years, decades actually, we've been seeing the narrative that the people are to blame, that these single-use plastics is an issue of the lack of discipline of people, the lack of really good waste infrastructure in the global south, the lack of waste management. So we've been seeing this narrative came out in the mainstream media. But thanks to and in 2015, in fact, a study came out that says China, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, these are the top, countries producing plastic debris, plastic leakage entering the world oceans. And you can see here, a lot of these countries are actually from the global south, and at least the top 5 or 6 countries are from Asia. Yeah. For example, in the Philippines, there's actually a landmark law, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of the Philippines, or Republic Act 9003, which together with other 2 laws there, the banning incineration and really mandating household waste segregation at the household level, and really making sure that villages and community are really segregating their waste and are really making their waste management more efficient without resorting to waste incineration and really preventing it to go to the landfills instead. So what is mandated under this decentralized system? This is actually like a zero waste system. So you need to segregate, sell recyclable, and compose the organics at the household level. At the village level, you need to collect, segregate waste, or sell recyclables, compose organics using your materials recovery facility. And at the city level, the special waste, or those that can either be recycled or composted, these are the ones who should be who should go to the city or the municipal level. Okay, so this is a typical waste stream, right? You have the organics, which can be composted, the recyclable, which can be recycled. But you can see here the residuals, the plastic bags, the packaging. These are the wastes that can neither be recycled nor composted. And in a typical Asian community, Southeast Asian community, you have the organics, you have the recyclable. We can do something about this waste, but the residuals are they are really the problematic ones because we cannot do something about them, and these actually account to a significant fraction in our waste stream. You know, in one success model zero waste community in the Philippines, the compliance rate for waste segregation, source segregation is at 95%. And the current diversion rate, meaning the percentage of waste that goes to the landfill, is at 80%. No? So, and the image there is actually an image of a materials recovery facility of this community. So you can see here through massive information education campaign and door-to-door segregation at the village level, zero waste communities in the Philippines and in other Southeast Asian countries are successful and are becoming model zero waste communities. And actually, it also helps, you know, with the whole discussion on climate and the GHG emissions, because you reduce the energy used to transport waste from 120 times per month to just 30. Yeah, it's really possible. Zero waste, it's really possible, and there are a lot of groups in the US like Gaia who are really helping communities to transform them into becoming zero waste. And in Asia, a lot of member groups of Break Free are also working with local government units. So this is an ideal image of a materials recovery facility. You have the recyclables segregated there. You have these organics that are being composted and being returned back to the environment, no, through composting, through these urban food gardens, and there in the MRF. Yeah. But despite having zero waste processes and community models in different parts of countries in Southeast Asia, there's still these residuals, no? And the 14% which can either be recycled or composted. And these are single-use plastics which have been inundating us because of these fast-moving consumer goods. You know, products that are being sold in small packets or sachets, cooking oils, soy sauce, etc., vinegars, shampoo, conditioners that are packed in small sachets, packets that are sold because they are so-called quote-unquote pro-poor, because they're economical. That's why we need to build power. And in 2017, the Break Free from Plastic movement, Earthworks is part of that, and along other environmental justice groups in the US who are members of Break Free from Plastic, they met. I wasn't still part of the team there, but we met in 2000. They met in 2017 in the Philippines, created a common strategic framework and vision, you know, supporting regional, national, and cross-border organizing. And right now we're at least, well, this should be updated, 2,000 plus members globally. Yeah. So these are some of the members in Asia Pacific. Yeah, we're one of our communications and campaigning workshop held in Manila. Okay, so this is our strategy. Because we really see the need to turn the tide on plastic pollution. We want to end plastic pollution for good. Yeah, and plastic pollution must be tackled from the source up to the end. That's why we're bringing groups also from you guys, no? These groups fighting petrochem and the oil and gas industry. Yeah, so the plastic pollution, different intervention points that we're seeing. Yeah, and one of which we also do for the 4th year this year, we're doing brand audit, where although now it will be in a different condition because of COVID-19 pandemic, we are auditing the different waste in our communities and in the oceans, and coming up annually with our top 10 plastic polluters. So on the left side, you can see the industry narrative that these are the countries to be blamed for plastic pollution. They lack the discipline, they lack the waste management system, they lack the robust infrastructure for waste management. But in fact, when you try to think about it, the real narrative is on the right side. These are the top 10 plastic polluters. Nestle, Unilever, Coca-Cola. Well, this is actually during the 1st year, no? And these top 10 plastic polluters, on the right side, this is just based on a Freedom Island cleanup in the Philippines. But the following year, we've done it globally. And this year, we will also be doing it, the brand audit, to really call on and keep the pressure on the top 10 plastic polluters. And for the past 2 years, Coca-Cola has been in the number one. Rank number one. So, but they also need to go back to the tradition. We need to go back to the old school before single-use plastics have started to inundate us and the markets. We need to, of course, every single choice has a consequence. We need to refuse. But at the end, even if we refuse all the single-use plastics that we can, we also need to scale the battle. We need to really fight, systemically. We need to, the change must be systemic rather than the individual contributions. And so, from an Asian perspective, how do I link plastics and climate? This is a beautiful quote from Jennifer Creel, the Earthworks executive director, whom I met 2 years ago in Pittsburgh and in Washington, D.C. Yeah. So the global north headquartered companies are inundating us, meaning us here in the other side of the world, with single-use plastic packaging called sachets or packets, which can neither be recycled nor composted. It's also the waste dumping from the global north to the global south, and also some developed countries in our region like Japan, Australia, South Korea, Hong Kong, and plastic production through petrochem, oil and gas industries, which, of course, if you're going to look at the big picture, the whole the plastics chain, you have to look at it from the production up to the disposal. So to break free from plastic is to really stop plastic where it begins, where it starts. So this was taken in Pittsburgh 2 years ago, in one of those plants in Pittsburgh. Yeah. So we need to build solidarity, bridge the fight. And I end with a quote from 2 years ago when I wrote a blog. We need convergence among movements from different races and from different kinds of struggles is necessary as we fight against big corporations carrying the neoliberal principles. Uniting these groups from the upstream to the downstream of the plastic pollution will bring about a broad yet solid front against capitalism and its successes. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, round of applause. I wish you could hear all of our love for you, Jed. We are so honored. I am so honored to have been part of this discussion with you. You really taught us so much. And I did see one question in the chat. Let me find it really quick. I lost it. Pat Hersey said, I work to reduce plastic, but the only way to get changes in law is chipping away. But we need to swing for the fences. How do we get that done? So I think the question is really like, when the laws are working against us, how do we keep fighting?
Yeah, I mean, even here in the Philippines, even if there's a law, no, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, every year, legislators here have been trying to repeal the ban on waste incinerations, probably because of the pressure from different governments offering the waste-to-energy technology, you know, and making the offer more palatable and more palatable, especially from a politician side. But I think the thing is, we really need to keep fighting, because for the people and the planet, at the end, you know, we need to think about the future generations to come. And yeah, so we just need to continue fighting, even if it's hard sometimes. And it's yeah. So yeah, sorry, I was and yeah, so really to invest in, because it's an investment for the future generations to come. Yeah.
We have another question from Rita Castillo, which says, hi, Jed, thank you. Do the plastic industry, I think, still accept plastic trash in the U.S.?
Philippine Islands.
Oh, sorry, I don't know acronyms very well. Do the Philippine Islands still accept plastic trash from the U.S.? And also, who did you mention was doing a good job in the U.S. on zero waste?
Well, yeah. So the second question, the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, or GAIA, they are really doing a great job working with their members and the communities and municipalities to become zero waste. For the first question, right now we're still advocating for the Philippine government to really ban waste imports, and to really how do you call this term, to make the Basel Ban Amendment Treaty, to ratify the treaty, the Basel Ban Amendment, which really ensure that no waste imports can just go to these different communities, to the different ports of different countries, in the guise of recycling. There should be free, prior, and informed consent, and there's the right to refuse is there. Yeah. So we need to pressure countries as well also to ratify that ban, the treaty, about the Basel Ban Amendment.
There's another question. Have you found a model for zero waste in the Philippines?
Yeah, there's actually, I can say at least 2 model zero waste communities in the Philippines, one in San Fernando, Pampanga, and one in a village here in Metro Manila. But we really need investments, to really work with communities to make them zero waste, and to really ensure that the law, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, is really being implemented through to its core and its intent. Yeah.
And are there any resources or case studies that we can look at any of those models?
Yeah, there's actually, yeah. Yeah, there's actually a website which Gaia actually launched last year, containing all these zero waste case studies in other parts of the world as well, not just in Asia. Yeah, I think it's zerowasteworld.org, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, I found it. It was noburn.org.
Yeah, that's the Gaia website. Yeah, noburn.org. But I think they have like a separate URL for those case studies.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Jed,
I got it right.
Can you say that one more time, that link?
Well, that's zerowasteworld.org. Yeah, I'm also copy pasting that the link in the chat.
Thank you. One benefit of having to do all of this stuff on COVID sometimes has been, number one, we cut down on our emissions. Number two, we cut down on our travel costs and commute times. Number three,
Yeah.
And number four, we're able to share resources so much more freely. So this is just a huge blessing for all of us. Jed, I want to give you another round of applause. Leann, I want to give you another round of applause. This conversation has been so wonderful and informative, and I'm really excited to continue the conversation this coming Thursday.
Yes, yeah. Also looking forward to being with you virtually, because 2 years ago I was also there traveling in different parts of the US, talking to communities like you fighting the oil and gas and petrochem build out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I know you have fans in the chat who remember your visit.
Thank you. So,
okay, y'all.
Yes.
We'll see you on Thursday. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you had a really wonderful time. We appreciate you, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.
Thanks so much. It's so good to see you guys, and look forward to talking on Thursday.
Yeah. See you Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all, everyone.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Buenas noches a todos. Thursday.
Mhm.
Bye.
Good night. Thanks, everybody. It was great. Thanks, Leann, and thanks, Jed. It's good to
Thank
see
you
you
so
again.
much. It's amazing.
Jed, I don't know if you remember meeting in Pittsburgh, but sorry, you can't see my face, so I guess not. But it's good to see you again. Maybe I'm
Oh yeah.
there. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. I remember you.
Yeah, we were talking about what we were eating off of at the event.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
if I can dig it up, I'll send you a picture of all of us together.
Yes, please. Yeah. See you again. Yeah, talk to you again on Thursday. Yeah, my Friday.
What time is it
Yeah.
there now?
Well, it's 8:30 in the morning Wednesday.
Okay. Well, good morning. Go eat breakfast. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. See you.
You know, Lauren, and I said good
Great
night. I
to
said buenas noches. It's buenos dias. Have a good day. Talk to you later.